Haredi for many years.
Right. I didn't know you then.
You didn't know me.
I know your brother is more so.
My two brothers, they're both super Haredi.
Yeah.
Like where? Just trying to get a.
My brothers?
Like, what do you mean when you say that?
My older brother is Hasidic Rebbe
Wow.
with the whole courtyard and everything.
Really? He's the rebel.
He's the Rebbe. He calls himself the Hornesteipel Rebbe. Hornesteipel Rebbe. He's never been to Hornesteipel.
Which is in Europe, I guess.
That's typical.
Where?
But the Steipler, that's where he's from.
Where in the world does he live? Where does he live? Like, where does he practice?
My brother in Beitar Illit.
Oh, that's very Haredi. Okay. I'm trying to figure,
Yeah.
trying to figure out that.
And my younger brother is he's like Litvish Rosh Yeshiva, also in Beitar Illit.
Also in Beitar Illit. Both of them? That's mine.
And they're both very successful in their worlds.
And you're the black sheep of the family?
I'm the white sheep.
That's exactly what I'm going to say. It's actually
Family of black sheep.
the lighter one.
I get along. I really don't have any relationship with my older brother.
Yeah.
And we basically almost never did in our entire life. So when we were growing up, we had shared the same room, but a lot of times that we had literally had a line drawn down the middle of the room.
How much older is he?
A year and a half.
Wow.
That's enough for a line. That's not.
Oh, yeah.
I had that with my sister. Same thing, a year and a half, we got a line.
Yeah.
A line of year and a half, mate.
Didn't Maya and Sandra have a line?
He married the daughter of a Hasidic Rebbe. That's how he came into.
To the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah. My older brother has 12 kids. My younger brother has 14 kids.
Wow.
And I don't know how many grandkids and
But what is it?
Oh, yeah.
So much empathy.
but 1986, 1987, when I had cancer, and I went through chemo and stuff. It rearranged my life in a lot of ways, and I discovered meditation. And I discovered there's such a thing as Jewish meditation when I read Aryeh Kaplan's books, and I knew that they were there, but as a Haredi Talmid Chacham,
It wasn't in the curriculum.
it wasn't the curriculum. Like I did, books in English. How much value could something like that have? And then afterwards I kicked myself because I probably would have gone to try and meet him if he was still
Aryeh
alive.
Kaplan.
Aryeh Kaplan.
He died, I think, in '83. At age 48.
Yeah, he'd already passed away.
Yeah.
But you got to see him, didn't you?
I got to meet him. Yeah.
I couldn't go at that time.
You went to the other guy.
No.
You
I got to see Gedalia.
You went
I got
to
to Gedalia.
Gedalia Koenig.
Yeah.
Gedalia Koenig was on a tour raising money for the Grace Shul.
He's in California.
And he had a translator with him.
But I had I
And
had
he
to be shy
tape
as
recorded this.
1-year-old.
Listen to this. She tape recorded it and brought the tape back with her. And Raphael Rosen, who was the Rebbe's like medical advisor, I don't know how many others he had in that category, but
that was his son. He was
yeah,
the
it was
advisor of his son.
It was his son. But we had the tape of his father speaking in California, so we gave it to Raphael so he could listen to it. I think it meant something to him. It might have helped his recovery, you know. It was a perfect gift, right? For
I met Raphael back then too.
Yeah.
And when I was still in Denver.
Yeah, he was in Denver for some reason.
No, he wasn't in Denver. He was in Oklahoma.
Oh, right.
Oklahoma.
That's right.
He was in Duncan, Oklahoma, and the first thing he asked me is he was trying to grow a red heifer, para duma, and he asked me what shade of red is the right one. Wow. Of course, I couldn't answer him. I didn't know. But anyway,
A gingy cow.
Anyway, I realized that I was like very judgmental about things I didn't know anything about.
I see.
And then I tried to be less judgmental.
Yes.
And there were like certain things that I remember. Somebody lent me the book, The Tao of Physics.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that, and it was like there was a part about Eastern religion, and then there's a part about modern physics. So he was like making a comparison between the two.
Yeah.
Tao of Physics, Fridtjof Capra.
Right.
And I remember reading it, and I was like, we say the same thing.
Right?
We say exactly like this, and so this whole assumption that the only true religion is Judaism, and it's so unique from all the other ones.
Maybe not so.
And also science.
Yes. Which is not taught in your schooling.
No.
Right.
And it wasn't contradictory to it's. In fact, it's supported.
That was the 80s, right? That's when I was teaching a course in West Meets East, Jewish mysticism and Chinese philosophy. Because in my Tai Chi, learning Tai Chi and the Tao and stuff, I kept saying, that's Jewish. That's Judaism. And finally people said, why don't you, teach it?
So that was significant for me. So like when I discovered Aryeh Kaplan, I got all of his books and I read all his books and I started practicing a lot of those techniques.
Yeah.
And then when I read the Tao of Physics, I looked in the back of the books, other titles and in this series, Dancing Woolly Masters. I read all these New Age books about all sorts of different things, other religions.
Okay,
because
you're
I was
stepping out
because I was ignorant and I had judgments about all these things that I knew absolutely nothing about. And I tried, and so I read all these books about science, and a little after that, I guess it was about that in late 1980s. My neighbor lent me Rav Kook's Orota Kodesh.
I did it.
And that was like cold water on a thirsty soul. I just
Drink it in.
Just drank it in. It was, and that changed I had all these preconceived notions about secular Jews and the state of Israel and whatnot, even though Rav Kook died before he was established in the state of 1935, but his attitude towards that, it opened me up even more, and then I've been a big fan studying Rav Kook ever since. And that's when I
We came to your classes in Rav Cook when we came here. You were teaching on Tuesdays, I
Yeah.
think.
yeah.
And Derek Hashem. And
So I guess it was like 1990 or 1991.
yeah.
All these, there was a group of Jewish renewal people who came.
Came to your house.
They came on a tour, and they came. I gave them a talk. It was on Hanukkah.
It's like David Zaslow's group, or
Or maybe that was the one Marcia came on.
Jerry, what's his name?
Jerry Green,
Green, right, and Marcia Brooks was probably
Marsha
the
Brooks
Brooks,
was
yeah.
on it, and
so it was
Susan
Ari Hirschfeld.
Ari Rabari. He led it,
Yeah,
and Susan. She was like the head of Olive at the
Olive,
time.
yeah.
Susan,
Right.
what was her?
I can't remember.
Her partner was Moon.
and Moon later. Yeah, we didn't know that community so much. They were
Yeah,
East
the
Coast.
East Coast renewal people.
But she was like the head of,
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the
I
head
know.
for several years.
and
Sa-
she was
Sachs,
She had been a political
Susan
activist.
Sachs.
Susan Sachs, right.
She had been. She was involved in the famous robbery where somebody was killed, and she was a fugitive for
Yeah.
many years.
We had such colorful friends.
Are you ever gonna tell us what yeshiva you studied at? I'm dying to know.
She was a fugitive for many years,
I didn't know
and
that
she
was
turned
the
herself
same
in, and she did her time.
I didn't know that about her. But I think I know the story.
I didn't know. I had met her, and I was telling my father-in-law about this interesting person, Susan Sachs, and he remembered that she was too.
Well, that was a very interesting moment.
So when did you meet Zalman?
When did I meet Zalman? Well, I had seen Zalman
Oh,
in
back when we were
1970,
together, yeah.
1974.
All right.
Anyway,
So you
so
were,
all, they came.
so but weren't you at yeshiva?
Was I in
In
yeshiva?
yeshiva when you came to Zalman for Brengen with Zalman Shlomo?
No, I was in high school.
I was
so it's
17.
I was
before.
17. I was in high school. My brother had already got into being religious. I was heading in the other direction.
So where were you living? So you weren't.
I was 17. I was living at home.
Yeah, but where
Denver.
was home? But the Farbrengen was in Berkeley. You were at the Berkeley one.
I went with my brother. We drove to California because we wanted to check out the House of Love and Prayer. So we
This was the
drove.
one with the wall across the bedroom? The
Yeah.
bro-
And we did a Shabbaton
The house.
there. And I remember sitting there saying to myself, if I ever want to get back into seriously connecting to Judaism, it's not going to be through Shlomo. It's going to be through Rabbi Tursky,
Yeah.
because it didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Right, understandably.
I think I was too.
And this is what,
You grew up
when you were 17? This is when you were 17?
17.
17.
And we just
At that point-
happened. Everybody was going across the bay to have this. I think they call it Gathering of the Tribes or something. I don't remember. Don't remember.
Probably.
That was in January of 1967.
That was,
No,
but there were
it was-
gatherings
At
before. There
Golden
was.
Gate Park.
No, this was
This
in
is-
Berkeley. It was
right.
and that's when. But after this group came, I gave them a presentation of my art and we loved each
Connected.
other.
Yeah.
They loved me. I loved them. I didn't know anything about Jewish renewal, but I was open,
Yes, yes.
right? And they were open to me. Susan bought a painting. I sold other things. to some of them, and they invited me to come to the Kala.
Oh.
And I think that was the one in Berkeley.
The one in Berkeley was like
That's what
90,
we were.
91.
Oh.
And I came to the Kala, and it was all new and different
Wow.
for me. But I went there with an attitude not being judgmental. And I remember Shoshana, the
Yes.
Lea Shalom,
Pianist.
the pianist.
Yep.
So I remember there at the Friday night davening. Afterwards, like, she was in tears. They were like Tibetan bells and stuff. There was things that were like not kosher halachically, and
But they were rhythm. They weren't electric. But even the piano is not electric.
no, she
didn't play.
was playing the piano anyway. After
Yeah.
but there was something about it that really.
Right.
But I went there without being
Right.
Without judgment.
without judgment, and it was interesting to me. It was like, because I had been so far
Yeah.
on the right side,
Yeah.
I wanted to get a little more what it's like on the opposite the opposite side.
Yeah.
So, but they were like they would come up to me, are you okay? How are you taking this? And I was like, fine. So I did
And you were dressed in your Hasidic garb.
No.
I had removed
This
that.
is
I had got out of the Hasidic garb. It already been like 1987 after I recovered from chemo.
Yeah.
I took that
When did you
off.
have this father? What
It
year?
was maybe the end of 94
Oh, okay.
or something, give or take.
And so I taught not a whole class, but like a workshop.
Section.
Yes,
Workshop.
yes.
Yeah.
A workshop, and Yitzhak Marmerstein
And you came to your class.
was there. He came.
Good. You have Rob Cook in common.
It's like Marmerstein that lives in Manhattan.
No, he lives in Jerusalem.
Yitzhak Marmerstein, but he was in
Somewhere.
Vancouver.
Vancouver, yeah. He was in
at the
Canada.
He
time.
was
then.
married and has 2 boys, I think. Yeah.
Anyway, he just from my class, he knew that I was into Rav Cook, and like we met. 5 minutes later, we were in his apartment getting high and learning Rav Cook. And it was
This wasn't not Shabbos.
it wasn't
No,
Shabbos.
it was during the week.
It wasn't Shabbos, and then we've had that relationship
Such a special
ever
person.
since. And they invited me to teach at Eilat Chaim.
And you did.
I did. I taught there like maybe 10 summers.
Really?
But we remember also that when you were in Berkeley, teaching in Berkeley.
We brought you out once, the Minion or something. I remember it
And there was,
was
it
small.
was also
It
the,
was someone's
and the
house.
people that lived in Queen Esther's.
Yeah, the ladies' apartment.
Right.
Four women all got married now.
But who were, I don't know if they all did, but they were kind of neo-from.
I remember that.
Right.
I remember that. I did different things. I
Yeah.
gave a talk at
Down at the art studio, I think. Didn't you? Down near the dance
Me and
studios are.
Nancy Katz.
Nancy Katz's studio.
Yeah.
I did several things.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I remember what
I did a couple trips too.
Yeah.
I don't remember who brought me. It might have been when I was coming anyway to the States.
That's
like,
the way we usually
added-
got people.
We added on,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that was the beginning of my relationship
Yeah.
with Jewish Renewal,
Right.
and it helped me. It opened me up. It was like some of like the attitudes that people had were like so different than I would ever. Their interpretation of the Torah was like so different.
Mhm.
Like
Give me an example.
well, like growing up with Rashi and the commentaries. So you're a sorority. You're
A certain
guided
direction, yeah.
towards that direction. Then in the whole story with like Yaakov and Esav,
Yeah, yeah.
like Yaakov's for sure the good guy,
Yes.
and Esav is the bad guy.
Right, right. They were different companies. They were different. So bad, so terrible. Yeah.
Or I remember I was there in Berkeley on Purim. It was on Purim, and it was the Purim of the massacre in the Marat Machpelah.
Oh, yeah.
I was there too. David Miller was there. David Miller was dressed like a pregnant woman because his wife was pregnant. She was going to deliver soon. He had a kind of a make believe. Okay, remember that, right? That place along the highway that we rented once.
At the party, at the Purim party.
Yeah. So and I remember the shock of it, and I said, they're not going to take our simcha away from us. I said to myself, because that was the first thing you had to protect, the sanctity of the holiday.
But if imagine what's the attitudes of people in Berkeley and stuff.
Horrified,
us.
horrified, of course. But yeah, and generally North Alaska, of course. But anyway, that was like, look, we're always like running into coincidences, or that's not quite the right word, but things that have very different vibrations can happen at the same time in different parts of the world, and there's just no explaining how this kind of thing could be happening here, while this other kind of thing is happening there. I don't know, maybe it could be happening in the same apartment house. 4-7, and somebody's murdering his wife. 4-3, somebody's giving birth. Right? It's a very strange world. How can we live with these what are these polarities? In fact,